Okay. So in 1992, after 2.5 seasons with the Hornets, you get traded to the Bullets. How did that feel?
It was a little hurtful. It's the first time in my life I'm, being told, we don't really want you here. You got to accept that another team does want you and get over your feelings pretty quickly. But also I was ready for a move. I never felt like Charlotte was. I was just very young. The team was new. We lost all the time, and in my young mind, there were sometimes I didn't even feel like it was in the NBA because it's a brand new uniform. I've never seen these things before. I was kind of excited to go to an established NBA franchise.
Okay. So you start off in 1994, and you had a strong start, but then you had a situation where you were going to the basket and you came down on Dennis Rodman's foot.
Yeah, I was playing very well. It was a stretch where I probably didn't play 100 games in a row my whole career. I was constantly hurt, ankle injuries. I had really good legs for jumping and bad feet and ankles for landing. So I was constantly getting hurt, but I had put together a good stretch and was on the verge of making the All-Star team. Our owner had called me, and our GM, Wes Unseld, and said that I was going to make the All-Star team, be voted in by the coaches. And that afternoon, went out and was playing really well. And on the first quarter, I went to lay one in and came down on Dennis Rodman's foot. And it felt like a sprained ankle. And I started to get up, and I heard their bench yell, and I looked at my foot, and like it was upside down, and the bottom of my foot was facing my face. And so I could see the blood on the side of my, it'd come out, the bone had come out of the skin and the tape and all that stuff. So I just was embarrassed. It hurt, but in that moment, you're just, I feel super vulnerable. You're out there because you're sort of, I don't know, people look at you as this sort of superhuman athlete type of thing, and you are literally broken on the floor in a piece, and it's just a bad feeling. So I dislocated my ankle. Nothing was broken. I had to go to the hospital and they had to put it back in. And then I was in a cast for a little while, but I played 6 weeks to the day later, and that was a really dumb decision. We weren't going to make the playoffs. I just wanted to play. I was healthy enough, but it was really painful. I had a lot of scar tissue, and then the next season I was traded over the summer to Miami. And when I got to Miami, we started training camp, and that ankle was causing me problems. I had developed an Achilles problem due to it, had to get a surgery on my Achilles before I ever played a game in Miami.
Well, right. When you went to Miami, Pat Riley just got hired as the head coach.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Great. So Pat and my father went to Kentucky at the same time. They both played at the University of Kentucky. They had an undefeated freshman team. Freshmen at the time couldn't play varsity. And so they had an undefeated freshman team, and my dad and Pat were teammates. I don't think I even really knew that or had I really knew Pat as the coach of the Lakers, and then he was the coach of the Knicks when I, was in the NBA, and now he's taken the job in Miami. I just know that his players played hard for him. They respected him, and Miami was a team that was on the verge of making the playoffs, and I had never played on a team that had a chance of playing in the playoffs, so I was really excited about it.
Well, that next year, you guys played against the Bulls, and this was during the historic 72-10 run that the Bulls had, and you gave them one of those 10 losses.
Yeah. I think if you go back in the history books right now and you look up who was the most points scored against the 95-96 Bulls, the answer is me, and then Karl Malone and Gary Payton and Rick Smits and Reggie Miller and all that. But I caught them on an off night. They came into South Beach in Miami. We only had 8 players available because we'd made a trade the previous day, had some guys en route. I'm sure they thought they were coming in to just another saunter to another win, and we caught them off guard. I made a bunch of shots that night, and we put it on them.
Okay, but then after that, you continue to get injured over and over again.
Yeah, yes.
And right around that time, the Miami Heat were in a bidding war to get Juwan Howard,
Mm-hmm.
and they're also trying to get Alonzo Mourning back. And essentially, they wanted to keep you, but the only way they could keep you was to offer you the league minimum, which was about $250,000.
Right. And
you had made $2 million the year before, so you were upset that they lowballed you.
Yeah, and I was a starter in the NBA. I told him I just didn't want to do a 1-year deal, and that was kind of the understanding all year long. And the other odd thing about it is Juwan Howard and Alonzo Mourning are also represented by David Falk. So he has all three of us. And they offered me a 1-year minimum, and I said no, and they renounced my rights. And then they signed both Alonzo and Juwan, but then the league rescinded the Juwan trade. Juwan went back to Washington, and they unrenounced me and then offered me like $900,000 or $1 million. And then I also turned that down and became a free agent. And that's when I signed with Phoenix, also for the minimum. But that was a place I knew I would go and start.
Okay, so now you're playing for Phoenix, and then you busted your right index finger in practice.
Yeah, I got it caught in a jersey and dislocated it, but I had like an avulsion fracture where a piece of the bone between my fingers broke off and it flipped upside down. So they had to go in and have surgery on it, put metal and a screw in there. And I missed, a month of that season. But I had played really well all season. And when I came back, I was maybe even better. So I the rest for my legs probably did me good.
Well, you had some memorable games against the Supersonics in the playoffs. In game 1, you set a playoff record for 3-point shots.
Yep.
Later on, Klay Thompson beat that, and then Damian Lillard beat that later on.
Yeah, but for 20 years.
But how did it feel to actually set that record?
I didn't know it was a record. I didn't, you don't. And also, at that time, you got to think about it. Guys weren't taking the amount of threes that they do today. But I think the record was 8 before that, and Dan Marley had it. And so then I broke it and made it 9. And then for 20 years, that record stood. Vince Carter tied it. Ray Allen tied it. Allen Iverson tied it. And I think Klay and Stephen both did until Klay finally broke it. But it stood for 20 years, that's pretty damn cool.
Now, playing for Phoenix, you said there was some tension between Jason Kidd and Kevin Johnson. Who both went to Cal. And what's actually funny is I went to Cal, and Jason Kidd was going there at the same time that I was going there. I would always see him, see him around campus and everything else like that. We didn't know each other, but he definitely was a superstar on the campus.
Right.
What exactly was the tension between these two?
I don't think anything other than stupid, silly, being young, both being from Cal. They were both the man. And honestly, I think when Kevin, this was not an era where you played 2 point guards at the same time. And when Jason came in, Kevin was on the downhill at that point. And I just think Kevin, probably felt a little slighted and, maybe didn't take Jay under his wing maybe like he could. And then Jason's also very hard-headed. He's one of my best friends, but he's hard-headed. And, a lot of it was him being immature and young. And I'm sure they're fine now. But, yeah, there was a little tension when we were all teammates.
Okay, so 97, you played for the Suns again. 98, once again, you're on the Suns.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you made a huge mistake when it came to shoe companies.
Oh, yeah. So I had played 2 years for the minimum, and then Phoenix signed me to a 6-year, $21 million deal going into the 98 season. They knew that I wasn't going to play all those years because I was already breaking down. I'd had another leg injury. I'd had another wrist injury, had a very bad thumb injury in my 12th year, all on my right hand. So they knew that I would maybe only play 3 or 4 of the years. I ended up only playing 2 of those years, but they had insurance and whatnot had to pay. But yeah, I had signed a substantial contract, and I had worn Converse my first 5 years, Nike my next 5 years, and then going into my 11th year, a shoe company called AND1 wanted me to be their first NBA basketball player to wear their shoe. I said, sure, they're going to pay me a little more money than Nike was going to pay. And so I did it. Within days, like, the shoes were just not very good. I started having a nerve problem in between and the ball of my foot. And I played with it all year long, taking cortisone shots, Novocaine shots before ball games just to get through the games. I ended up having a neuroma that had to be removed at the end of the year, but yeah, it didn't help my injury problems.
Well, yeah, as you were going through this foot pain, the doctor prescribed Vicodin to you, which is an opioid. And that set off a whole bad chain of events.
Yeah, again, I had Vicodin and I guess Lortab or whatever after surgeries before, but I didn't like them. They gave me really weird dreams, and I didn't sleep very well. I never slept well anyway. I'm a notorious insomniac. So I didn't like them. And also I was always needing to know, how bad it hurt, because I got to play. And so I didn't want anything numbing that medicine. So I was always off the Vicodin within a couple of days. After that foot surgery, though, I found myself, kind of, I hurt all the time, and I'm trying to play, but I found myself kind of, I think, justifying taking the Vicodin from time to time. Yeah, I was in pain, but I kind of liked the way it made me feel a little bit. And I didn't know why, but so when I look back, definitely, there was something about it that, made it very attractive to me.